Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Let's Play Morrowind. We are in Vivec's palace. We have before us a bunch of paperwork that we intend to read. Vivec's just over there doing his god thing. He has tasked us with going to Red Mountain and finally putting an end to this, destroying Dagoth Ur and destroying the heart of Lorkhan. First, though, we have some things to read. Dagoth Ur's plans, for one thing. The following documents were prepared by temple scholars and agents of the Inquisition for Lord Vivec. From interrogation of captured sleepers and other Sixth House cultists, and victims of dream-induced mania, from interviews with Lord Vivec concerning historical campaigns against Red Mountain, and from broad conjectures and inferences made upon these materials, this is our best estimate of Dagoth Ur's motivations and objectives in this most recent phase of his war upon Morrowind. 1. Basic objectives. 1. Establish a theocracy in Morrowind based on the worship of the newborn god Akulakan, second Numidium, to be created by Dagoth Ur from the heart of Lorkhan, and a body constructed according to the principles and rituals pioneered by the Dwemer Kagrenek. Establish the ancient heirs of House Dagoth as the god priests of Akulakan, and the Sixth House of Dagoth Ur as the dominant political power in Morrowind. Through charismatic conversion, unite the Dunmer under the guidance of Dagoth Ur to battle against the foreign animals who hold Morrowind in subjection. Note: Dagoth Ur has apparently adopted the views and motivations of the Dwemer High Craft Lord Kagrenak. In effect, he recapitulates the ancient blasphemous folly of the Dwemer. 2. Expose the false worship of the Tribunal and destroy the ecclesiastical authority and political power of the Temple. How much the dissident priests or the cult of the Nerevarine may be controlled or influenced by the Sixth House in this regard is open to speculation. 3. Extirpate all remaining individuals of inferior and mongrel races from Morrowind. 4. Drive the Empire from Morrowind. 5. Recover ancient territory stolen by Skyrim and Argonia. 6. Extend the worship of Akulakan to all nations of Tamriel through subversion and conquest. Plans to establish and expand the Sixth House. Phase 1. Secure Red Mountain against Tribunal intruders. Deny Tribunal access to the heart, weakening the temple while securing Red Mountain for the creation of Akulakan. Keep the construction of Second Numidium a secret. Burp after drinking too many fizzy drinks. Apologies. Phase 2. Create passive servants in ever-widening circles around Red Mountain by broadcasting compulsions couched in dream imagery to susceptible subjects in their sleep. Establish a major operational base at Kogaroon for further operations in the Ash Wastes. Establish smaller bases near small port villages and in lower-class waterfront districts in Vivec. Infiltrate and subvert smuggling syndicates. Recruit willing followers from the disaffected population, including the underworld, the poor, and rabid anti-imperial activists. Phase 3. Expand from smaller bases to other towns and villages, and recruit and indoctrinate subjects made susceptible by dream sendings. Occupy abandoned towers and ruins, and train corrupted cultists as raiders and irregular troops. Identify, discredit, and decimate possible sources of political resistance. Phase 4. Use assassination and terror to weaken, distract, and disrupt the legions and the imperial bureaucracy, along with their Hlalu sympathizers. Inspire popular uprisings of the native poor against the foreign rich and powerful. Summon sleepers and dreamers to Dagoth Ur to work on Second Numidium. Inferring Dagoth Ur's perspectives. Dagoth Ur thinks on a large time scale, for the most part in the outside of time scale of the divine consciousness. He thinks that only obstacles of mythic scale are worth the consideration. He believes he is fated to rule Morrowind, to free Morrowind of the Empire, and to become the new hard-loving father of Morrowind. Given that perspective, the only opposing forces Dagoth Ur worries about are the Tribunal, the Daedra, the Emperor, and the Incarnate. With the Tribunal's loss of Sunder and Keening, and with the diminishing resources of Vivec, Almalexia, and Sothasil, Dagoth Ur believes he has permanently gained a decisive strategic advantage. On a mortal timescale, the battle may last for centuries, but the outcome is not in doubt. And Akulakan may be a device for dramatically reducing the timescale for a decisive victory. The myth of dynamic invincibility of the Emperor and the Empire has long been an unquantifiable and intimidating threat, but recent rumours of unrest in Cyrodiil, of the Emperor's failing health, and the unsettled question of the succession have diminished the scale of that threat. Nonetheless, the revelation that the Nerevarine is a pawn of Imperial intelligence, handpicked and sent to Morrowind by the Emperor himself, may cause Dagoth Ur considerable anxiety. The Daedra represent no coherent obstacle to Dagoth Ur. Nonetheless, their personal abilities and their influence upon their fanatic followers is considerable. Their motives and actions obscure, and Dagoth Ur remains concerned about them. The Incarnate represents Saint Nerevar, a mythic force that has previously defeated Dagoth Ur, and Dagoth Ur is obsessed with this threat. At the same time, Dagoth Ur knew Nerevar personally, knew that he was a mortal man with faults and weaknesses. Dagoth Ur may have some hope of seducing or negotiating with Nerevar's reincarnation. Further, when Nerevar and the Tribunal defeated Dagoth Ur, they were strong and allied. Now, the Nerevarine and the Tribunal are weak, opposed, and divided. Therefore, though the Nerevarine and the Tribunal represent the most serious threat to Dagoth Ur's plans, he still has good reason to believe that this time he will prevail. A recent timescale of Dagoth Ur's activities. Much of the following timescale is based on inference from incomplete information. Before 2E882, Dagoth Ur and his kin lie dreaming beneath the sills of Red Mountain. 2E882. Dagoth Ur and his ash vampires awake refreshed and emerge from lower Red Mountain into the Heart Chamber. Dagoth Ur ritually binds himself and his brethren as Heart Wights in a ritual of his own devising. First stages of construction of Second Numidium, conceived during the Long Sleep, are begun by Heart Wights and Atronach's construct in a chamber near the heart of Lorcan. Keeping the Second Numidium project a secret from the Tribunal is a high priority. 2E882. The Tribunal arrive at Red Mountain for their annual ritual bathing in the Heart's power. Dagoth Ur and Ash Vampires ambush the Tribunal. The Tribunes are driven away and prevented from restoring themselves with Kagranak's tools at the heart of Lorcan. 2E882 to 3E417. Intermittent Tribunal campaigns assault Red Mountain. The Tribunal and supporting forces seek to force access to the Heart Chamber, but are repeatedly driven back. Dagoth Ur recruits sleepers and dreamers through dream sendings. Cultists are recruited through dream compulsion. Weaker cultists become corpus beasts. Stronger cultists advance through stages towards the powers of ascended sleepers. 3E400, so about 26 years ago. Coggaroon reoccupied by Dagoth Ur and fortified as an advanced base for 6th House operations. Blight storms more frequent and widespread. Soul sickness spreads in regions close to Red Mountain. 3E410. 6th House bases founded near Nar Mok and in waterfront areas of Vivec. 6th House operatives exploit smuggler organizations and communications to spread their influence among victims unbalanced by Dagoth Ur's dream sendings. 3E415. Small cells of 6th House cultists in every town in Vardenfell. Larger 6th House operations are concealed in remote dungeons where creatures are bred and cultists are trained for the coming struggle. 3E417. Almalexia and Sothersil lose the artifacts Keening and Sunder to Dagoth Odros and Vemin. Vivec rescues Almalexia and Sothersil, but failing to recover Keening and Sunder, the Tribunal retreat from Red Mountain in disorder. Surviving Buoyant Armiger companions know the Tribunal was forced to retreat, but do not know how serious a reversal the Tribunal has suffered. The 3 tribunes return to their respective capitals and continue to perform their ritual functions. The tribunes continue to grow weaker without access to the heart and because of resources required to support the Ghost Fence. The inner circle of the Temple priesthood has begun to suspect the tribunes have suffered seriously from wounds and demoralization in the wake of reverses at Red Mountain, but do not recognize the scale of the problem. 3E426 to 427. Campaign of 6th House assassinations of prominent Imperial citizens and Hlalu Imperial sympathizers. Sudden increase in number and seriousness of attacks by cultists and victims deranged by soul sickness. Noted with concern. 1. Dagoth Ur can apparently perceive and communicate directly through his cultists. Sleepers and dreamers are often reported speaking as though with Dagoth Ur's voice and intention. 2. Little is known about the features, scale, or stage of the completion of Akula Khan, Second Numidium. No one has gained entrance to the Heart Chamber since 2E282. In 3E417, Keening and Sunder were captured and may substantially aid in Akula Khan's construction. Okay, so things are looking pretty grim then. Grimmer than anyone might have realised, I think. Grimmer perhaps than Fathis certainly realised. Okay. Dagoth Ur's plans, Nerevarine at Red Mountain. Plan to defeat Dagoth Ur. For the past 20 years, the Tribunal have tried unsuccessfully to execute this plan. However, we failed because we were required to stage an assault and simultaneously maintain the Ghost Fence to prevent the threatened large-scale breakout of Dagoth Ur's blighted hosts. With the Nerevarine leading the assault, and the Tribunal free to devote their full energies to maintaining the Ghost Fence, this plan has a greater chance of success. Unfortunately, however, the loss of the artifacts Sunder and Keening, and the recent increase in Dagoth Ur's strength, poses new problems for the execution of the plan. Therefore, our proposed plan has the following 5 phases. A series of aggressive raids to scout inside the Ghost Fence. 2. A series of aggressive raids to neutralize Dagoth Ur's Ash Vampire kin and recover artifacts from the bodies of his kin. 3. An assault of Gate Citadel Veminal to neutralize Dagoth Vemin and recover the artifact Hammer Sunder. An assault of Gate Citadel Odrasal to neutralize Dagoth Odros and recover the artifact Blade Keening. The one we went to was Tyranulal, wasn't it? So it's neither of these two. 5. An assault of Citadel Dagoth with the artifacts Wraithguard, Sunder, and Keening to sever Dagoth Ur's connection to the Heart of Lorkhan, and thus to destroy Dagoth Ur. Phase 1. Raids inside the Ghost Fence. The Tribunal, Ordinators, and Buoyant Armigers are familiar with the terrain and will provide maps and current intelligence reports. The region inside the Ghost Fence is dangerous, and the Nerevarine will need to be familiar with its particular challenges. After measuring skills and resources against Dagoth Ur's defences, the Nerevarine will know better how to pace a campaign, alternating raids with improving skills, getting better equipment, and stockpiling resources. So they're not expecting us to do this in a rush. Phase 2. Raids upon Ash Vampire Citadels. Dagoth Ur's kin have become markedly more powerful in recent decades, after remaining stable for thousands of years. If they can be individually isolated and destroyed, they will not be able to support Dagoth Ur in later stages of the war. It may also be that the dramatic increase in their power comes from items enchanted by Dagoth Ur. Salvage of such items might contribute to our resources. Phase 3. Assault on Gate Citadel Veminal. Essential to recover the artifact Hammer Sunder for Phase 5. The Ash Vampire Dagoth Vemin has possession of Sunder, and probably seeks to discover the secrets of its enchantments. He may also have access to notebooks and journals of Kagranak that may have survived the Dwemer workshops of Veminal. Phase 4. Assault on Gate Citadel Odrasal. Essential to recover the artifact Blade Keening for Phase 5. The Ash Vampire Dagoth Odros has possession of Keening, and probably seeks to discover the secrets of its enchantments. He may also have access to notebooks and journals of Kagranak that have survived in the Dwemer workshops of Odrasal. Okay. Phase 5, Assault on Citadel Dagoth. All the previous stages are preparations for this stage. Recent expeditions show that Citadel Dagoth has undergone extensive expansion. The location will need to be explored carefully. The known route to the Heart Chamber will be well defended. Alternative routes may exist. Dagoth Ur will have anticipated our plan to destroy him by attacking the Heart, and he will almost certainly personally oppose approach to the Heart Chamber. Together, the Tribunal could not defeat him, and he has grown stronger since then. Admittedly, the Tribunal had the distraction of maintaining the Ghost Fence, simultaneous with fighting Dagoth Ur, but even so, the challenge seems daunting. The adoption of this phased campaign seems to offer the best chances for success. In retrospect, the Tribunal's decision to directly assault Citadel Dagoth rather than proceed step by step through the lesser objectives must be seen to have been a serious error. The Tribunal did not feel it had the option of a slow-paced and deliberate campaign, given that they had many other competing priorities, not least of which was the maintenance of the Ghost Fence and the outer defences surrounding Red Mountain. The Nerevarine, on the other hand, should be best served by a careful, step-by-step advance, with the additional advantage of building confidence along the way, while successes would undermine Dagoth Ur's own assurance in his defences. Employing Kagranak's tools against Dagoth Ur. The source of Dagoth Ur's supernatural power is the Heart of Lorcan. The Heart is also the source of the Tribunal's divine powers. During Mythic times, the gods took and hid Lorcan's heart beneath Red Mountain as a punishment for creating the mortal plane. The Dwemer discovered the heart while building underground colonies. High Craft Lord Kagranak created enchanted tools intended to tap the power of the heart. The War of the First Council was fought to prevent this sacrilege. Kagranak's use of these tools and the disappearance of the Dwemer race marked the end of the war. Kagranak's tools were recovered by Lord Nerevar and Dagoth Ur. Dagoth Ur was left to guard the tools while Nerevar came to consult with us, his advisors. In Nerevar's absence, Dagoth Ur experimented with the tools upon the heart and was corrupted. We returned to discover a deranged Dagoth Ur who refused to turn over the tools. When he attacked us, we drove him away. We left Red Mountain with the tools, and subsequently Sothersill discovered their secrets. Collectively, we used the tools to establish a connection with the heart, enabling ourselves to transform our mortal natures. Thus we became the Tribunal. Dagoth Ur had survived our attacks, and without the tools, in a manner not well understood, Dagoth Ur also managed to establish a connection with the heart, and to transform himself into an immortal being. Our plan to destroy Dagoth Ur also runs the risk of destroying the Tribunal. The plan is to permanently disrupt Kagranak's enchantments upon the heart, severing connections with Dagoth Ur and ourselves, and rendering us all once again mortal. A mortal Dagoth Ur may then be destroyed by mundane means. The loss of godhood and the possible death of the Tribunal are judged a necessary risk and sacrifice. The normal procedure for establishing connection with the heart is a 3-step process. The wearer of Wraithguard strikes the heart with the hammer Sunder, causing the heart to produce a pure tone. Then the wearer of the Wraithguard strikes the heart with the blade Keening, shattering the pure tone into a prism of tone shades. These tone shades are then imprinted upon the substance of the wearer of Wraithguard, giving him an immortal and divine nature. The Nerevarine will not be taught the secret rituals required to perform the 3rd step. Instead, the Nerevarine will strike the heart with Keening for a 2nd time, causing its tones to diverge into unstable patterns of interference. Further repeated strikes with Keening will further disrupt the tones, with the ultimate result of shattering and dispelling Kagranak's original enchantments binding the heart, thereby severing the heart's links with Dagoth Ur, and with any surviving heart wights, and with the Tribunal. Destroying Kagranak's enchantments on the heart will also stop the corrupt effusion of the heart's divine power, and end the blight on Morrowind. The Nerevarine may be tempted to steal the power of the heart. Dagoth Ur and Sothersill alone know this secret. Dagoth Ur may, in extremity, propose to teach the Nerevarine to use Kagranak's tools to become a god. We doubt that the Nerevarine is fool enough to trust Dagoth Ur, and are content to take this risk. Be warned, the Nerevarine cannot safely equip either Keening or Sunder unless wearing Wraithguard. The Nerevarine will be injured every moment while holding either of these artifacts unless protected by Wraithguard. Persistence will be rewarded with death. If the Nerevarine can equip an item while not wearing Wraithguard and receive no injury, the item is a counterfeit. One last note. Dagoth Ur must not get hold of Wraithguard. The Nerevarine must prepare and use a recall or Almsevi intervention if there is any risk of death or capture. The element of surprise. Dagoth Ur will not expect you to destroy Kagranak's enchantments on the heart. He does not know it is possible, he would not do it himself, and he knows we have never tried it. He will not believe anyone would want to sacrifice the promise of such power. Further, advancement in House Dagoth, as in all great houses, is by challenge and confrontation within the hierarchy. The Nerevarines' challenges and defeats of ash vampires and battles with the 6th House will be viewed in that light. Dagoth Ur and his kin may assume the Nerevarines' ambition is to control the heart. Given that assumption, it is only reasonable that the Nerevarine would try to defeat each of Dagoth Ur's subordinates in turn, working up to Dagoth Ur. If the Nerevarine can defeat Dagoth Ur and control the heart, so much the better. But logically, the Nerevarine would wish to rise as high in the hierarchy as possible before cutting a deal with the head of the house. Dagoth Ur should try to recruit the Nerevarine into House Dagoth. It may be possible to pretend to join him, then betray him. However, any attempt to deceive him will be very risky. House Dagoth has a tradition of subterfuge and treachery, and because he is a deceiver, he will expect deception. Closing remarks. We place no compulsion upon the Nerevarine to adhere to the plans described here. We believe that they offer the best chance of destroying Dagoth Ur, but we have also chosen to place our trust in the Nerevarines' judgment and skill. Frankly, we see no alternative. If there are doubts or questions, speak with Vivec. He has agreed to serve as the Nerevarines' guide and counsellor for this campaign. It may be that if the Nerevarine succeeds, the Tribunal will not survive. Such sentiments as might have been expressed in the Tribunal should, in that case, be addressed to the land and people of Morrowind. May the happy convergence of fortune and prayer meet in our destiny. On behalf of Lady Almalexia and Lord Sarthasil, Vivec. Well, there you have it, folks. However, Battle of Red Mountain and Nerevar at Red Mountain. These are the two accounts that Vivec gave us, or told us about. One of them, he says, is false. One of them is his account. He said we should make up our own minds whether we think which one is true. The Battle of Red Mountain and the rise and fall of the Tribunal. The following is a transcript of the words of Lord Vivec, addressed to a dissident priest, Malor Omain, who confronted Vivec with the Ashlander traditions surrounding the Battle of Red Mountain and with the prophecies of the Nerevarine, and to unnamed magistrates of the Inquisition who joined Vivec in interrogating the dissident priests. Who can clearly recall the events of the distant past? But you have asked me to tell you, in my own words, the events surrounding the Battle of Red Mountain, the birth of the Tribunal, and the prophecies of a Nerevar reborn. Here is what I can tell you. When the Chimera first abandoned the herds and tents of their nomadic ancestors and built the first great houses, we loved the Daedra, and worshipped them as gods. But our brethren, the Dwemer, scorned the Daedra, and mocked our foolish rituals, and preferred instead their gods of reason and logic. So the Chimera and Dwemer were always at bitter war, until the Nords came and invaded Resdain. Only then did the Chimera and Dwemer put away their strife and join together to cast out the invaders. Once the Nords were driven out, General Nerevar of the Chimera and General Dumac of the Dwemer, who had come to love and respect one another, resolved to make peace between their peoples. In that time, I was but a junior counsellor to Nerevar, and Nerevar's queen, Almalexia, and his other favourite counsellor, Sarthasil, always doubted that such a peace might long survive, given the bitter disputes between Chimera and Dwemer. But by negotiation and compromise, Nerevar and Dumac somehow managed to preserve a fragile peace. Sorry guys, I need to take a drink there. But when Dagoth Ur, Lord of House Dagoth, and trusted as a friend by both Nerevar and the Dwemer, brought us proof that High Engineer Kagranak of the Dwemer had discovered the heart of Lorcan, and that he had learned how to tap its powers and was building a new god, a mockery of Chimera faith and a fearsome weapon, we all urged Nerevar to make war on the dwarves and to destroy this threat to Chimera beliefs and security. Nerevar was troubled. He went to Dumac and asked if what Dagoth Ur said was true. The Kagranak took great offence and asked whom Nerevar thought he was, that he might presume to judge the affairs of the Dwemer. Nerevar was further troubled and made pilgrimage to Holomayan, the sacred temple of Azura, and Azura confirmed that all that Dagoth Ur said was indeed true, and that the creation of a new god of the Dwemer should be prevented at all costs. When Nerevar came back and told us what the goddess had said, we felt our judgments confirmed, and again counselled him to war, chiding Nerevar for his naive trust in friendship, and reminding Nerevar of his duty to protect the faith and security of the Chimera against the impiety and dangerous ambitions of the Dwemer. Then Nerevar went back to Vardenfell one last time, hoping that negotiations and compromise might once again preserve the peace. But this time, the friends Nerevar and Dumac quarrelled bitterly, and as a result, the Khyma and Dwemer went to war. The Dwemer were well defended by their fortress at Red Mountain, but Nerevar's cunning drew most of Dumac's armies out into the field and pinned them there, while Nerevar, Dagoth Ur, and a small group of companions could make their way into the Heart Chamber by secret means. There, Nerevar, the Khyma king, met Dumac, the Dwarf king, and they both collapsed from grievous wounds and draining magics. With Dumac fallen, and threatened by Dagoth Ur and others, Kagrenac turned his tools upon the heart, and Nerevar said he saw Kagrenac and all his Dwemer companions at once disappear from the world. In that instant, Dwemer everywhere disappeared without a trace, but Kagrenac's tools remained, and Dagoth Ur seized them, and he carried them to Nerevar, saying, "That fool Kagrenac has destroyed his own people with these things. We should destroy them right away, lest they fall into the wrong hands." But Nerevar was resolved to confer with his queen and his generals, who had foreseen that this war would come, and whose counsel he would not ignore again. If he'd followed Dagoth Ur's advice and just destroyed them right then and there, much might have been different. Nerevar, you damn fool. I will ask the tribunal what we shall do with them, for they have had wisdom in the past that I had not. Stay here, loyal Dagoth Ur, until I return. So Nerevar told Dagoth Ur to protect the tools and the heart chamber until he returned. Then Nerevar was carried to us, where we waited on the slopes of Red Mountain, and he told us all what had transpired under Red Mountain. What Nerevar had said was that the Dwemer had used special tools to turn their people into immortals, and that the heart of Lorcan held wondrous powers. Only later did we hear from others present that Dagoth Ur had thought the Dwemer destroyed, not made immortal, and no one knows for sure what really happened there. After hearing Nerevar, we gave our counsel as he requested, proposing we should preserve these tools in trust for the welfare of the Khyma people, and who knows, perhaps the Dwemer are not gone forever, but merely transported to some distant realm from which they may someday return to threaten our security once again. Therefore, we need to keep these tools, to study them and their principles, so that we may be safe in future generations. And though Nerevar voiced his grave misgivings, he was willing to be ruled by our council under one condition, that we altogether should swear a solemn oath upon Azura that the tools would never be used in the profane manner that the Dwemer had intended. We all readily agreed, and swore solemn oaths at Nerevar's dictation. So, then we went with Nerevar back to Red Mountain and met with Dagoth Ur. Dagoth Ur refused to deliver the tools to us, saying that they were dangerous, and we could not touch them. Dagoth Ur seemed to be irrational, insisting that only he could be trusted with the tools, and then we guessed that he had somehow been affected by his handling of the tools. But now I feel sure that he had privately learned the powers of them, and had in some confused way decided that he must have them for himself. Then Nerevar and our guard resorted to force to secure the tools. Somehow, Dagoth Ur and his retainers escaped, but we gained the tools and delivered them to Sothersill for study and safekeeping. For some years, we kept the oaths we swore to Azura with Nerevar, but during that time, in secret, Sothersill must have studied the tools and divined their mysteries. And at last, he came to us with a vision of a new world of peace, with justice and honour for nobles, and health and prosperity for the commoners, with the tribunal as immortal patrons and guides. And dedicating ourselves to this vision of a better world, we made a pilgrimage to Red Mountain and transformed ourselves with the power of Kagrenac's tools. And no sooner than we had completed our rituals and begun to discover our newfound powers, the Daedra Lord Azura appeared and cursed us for our forsworn oaths. By her powers of prophecy, she assured us that her champion Nerevar, true to his oath, would return to punish us for our perfidy, and to make sure such profane knowledge might never again be used to mock and defy the will of the gods. But Sothersill said to her, "The old gods are cruel and arbitrary, and distant from the hopes and fears of Mer. Your age is past. We are the new gods, born of the flesh, and wise and caring of the needs of our people. Spare us your threats and chiding, inconstant spirit. We are bold and fresh, and will not fear you." And then, in that moment, all Khyma were changed into Dunmer, and our skins turned ashen and our eyes into fire. Of course, We only knew at that time that this had happened to us. But Azura said, "This is not my act, but your act. You have chosen your fate, and the fate of your people, and all the Dunmer shall share your fate, from now to the end of time. You think yourselves gods, but you are blind, and all is darkness." And Azura left us alone, in darkness, and we were all afraid. But we put on brave faces, and we went forth from Red Mountain to build the new world of our dreams. And the new world we shaped was glorious and generous, and the worship of the Dunmer fervent and grateful. The Dunmer were at first afraid of their new faces, but Sothersil spoke to them, saying that it was not a curse but a blessing, a sign of their changed natures, and sign of the special favour they might enjoy as new Mer. No longer barbarians trembling before ghosts and spirits, but civilized Mer, speaking directly to their immortal friends and patrons, the three faces of the tribunal. And we were all inspired by Sothersil's speech and vision, and took heart. And over time, which crafted the customs and institutions of a just and honourable society, and the land of Resdain knew millennia of peace, equity, and prosperity unknown to other savage races. But beneath Red Mountain, Dagoth Ur had survived, and even as the light of our bold new world shined ever more brightly, beneath Red Mountain the darkness gathered, a darkness that was close kid to the bright light that Sothersil coaxed from the heart of Lorcan with the tools of Kagranak. As the darkness grew, we fought it, and crafted walls to confine it. But we never could destroy it, for the source of the darkness was the same source as the source of our own divine inspiration. And in these latter days of Morrowind, reduced to a subjugated province of the Western Empire, as the glory of the temple fades and the dark tide rises from Red Mountain, we are reminded of Azura and her promised champion's return. We have waited, blind and in darkness, mere shadows, drained of our ardent vision, in shame of our folly, in fear of our judgment, and in hope of our deliverance. We do not know if the Outlander claiming to fulfill the prophecies of the Nerevarine is our old companion Nerevar Reborn, or a pawn of the Emperor, or a cat's paw of Azura, or some simple twist of fate. But we insist you adhere to temple doctrine and conform to the strictures dividing the hierographer from the apocrypher, and that you do not speak that which must not be spoken openly. Act as a dutiful priest should, in accordance with your vows of obedience to the canons and archcanons, and all will be forgiven. Defy me, and you will know what it is to stand against a god. Vivec. Right, so that's his account of what happened. What about the one that the Ashlanders believe? Nerevar at Red Mountain. The following is from the Apocrypha, the hidden writings of the Tribunal Temple. It is a scholarly retelling of a tradition transmitted through the Ashlanders concerning the battle at Red Mountain and subsequent events. The Ashlanders associate this tale with the telling of Alandro Sul, a shield companion of Nerevar who came to live among the Ashlanders after the death of Nerevar and during the ascension of the Tribunal. There are many variant treatments of this story, but the primary elements are consistent throughout the tradition. The murder of Nerevar, the tragic fate of Dagoth Ur, and the profane source of the Tribunal's divine power are denied by temple doctrine as ignorant Ashlander superstition, and not widely known among civilized Dunmer. Resdain, present-day Morrowind, was contested ground between two very different types of Mer, the Kaimer, who worshipped Daedra, and the Dwemer, who worshipped a profane and secret power. These two people warred with each other constantly until their lands were invaded by a young, vibrant, and violent alien culture, the Nords. Two heroes, one from the Kaimer and one from the Dwemer, Indoril Nerevar and Dumak Dwarfork, made peace between their people and together ousted the alien invaders. Then these two heroes worked long and hard to maintain that peace thereafter, though their counsellors thought it could not last, or, worse, that it shouldn't. Nerevar's queen and his generals, Almalexia, Sothersil, Vivec, told him to claim all Resdain for his own, but Nerevar would not listen, for he remembered his friendship with Dumak. There would be only peace. Until Dagoth Ur arrived, House Dagoth had discovered the source of the profane and secret power of the Dwemer, the legendary heart of Lorcan, which Dumak's people had used to make themselves immortal and beyond the measure of the gods. In fact, one of their high priests, Kagranak, was building a new god so that the Dwemer could claim Resdayn for their own. The tribunal urged Nerevar again to make war on the dwarves. Nerevar was troubled. He went to Dumak, his friend of old, and asked if what Dagoth Ur said was true. But Kagranak and the high priests of the Dwemer had kept their new god secret from their king, and Dumak said the Dwemer were innocent of any wrongdoing. Nerevar was troubled again, and made pilgrimage to Holamayan, the sacred temple of Azura, who confirmed that all Dagoth Ur said was indeed true, and that the new god of the Dwemer should be destroyed for the safety of not only Resdayn, but for the whole world. When Nerevar went back and told his tribunal what the goddess had said, his queen and generals felt themselves proved aright, and again counselled him to war. There were reasons that the Dwemer and Keimer had hated each other forever. Finally, Nerevar, angered that his friend Dumak would lie to him, went back to Vardenfell. This time the Keimer king was arrayed in arms and armour, and had his hosts around him, and he spoke harshly to Dumak Dwarfork, king of Red Mountain. "You must give up your worship of the heart of Lorcan, or I shall forget our friendship and the deeds that were accomplished in its name." And Dumak, who still knew nothing of Kagranak's new god, but proud and protective as ever of his people, said, "We shall not relinquish that which has been our way for years beyond reckoning, just as the Keimer will not relinquish their ties to the lords and ladies of Oblivion. And to come at my door in this way, arrayed in arms and armour and with your hosts around you, tells me you have already forgotten our friendship. Stand down, my sweet Nerevar, or I will swear by the 15 golden tones, I shall kill you and all your people." And so the Keimer and Dwemer went to war. The Dwemer were well defended by their fortress at Red Mountain, but the bravery and cleverness of Nerevar's queen and generals drew most of Dumak's armies out into the field and kept them there, so that Nerevar and Dagoth Ur could make their way into the Heart Chamber by secret means. There, Nerevar met Dumak, the Dwarf King, and they both fell from grievous wounds. That is where it starts to differ. They both fell from grievous wounds. Both of them. Not just Dumak. Dagoth Ur slew Kagranak and took the tools the Dwemer used to tap the power of the heart. He went to his dying Lord Nerevar and asked him what to do with these tools, and Nerevar summoned Azura again, and she showed them how to use the tools to separate the power of the heart from the Dwemer people. And on the fields, the tribunal and their armies watched as the Dwemer turned into dust all around them as their stolen immortality was taken away. So this is another difference. In the Ashlander's version, Nerevar and Dagoth Ur killed the Dwemer. They are the reason the Dwemer disappeared. It wasn't Kagranak. It was Nerevar and Dagoth Ur. They wiped them out. Back in Red Mountain, Nerevar told Dagoth Ur to protect the tools in the Heart Chamber until he returned. Dagoth Ur said, "But shouldn't we destroy these tools at once, so that they might never be used for evil again?" And actually, brief intermission here, something that's just occurred to me is, not only did they destroy the Dwemer in this telling of the story, but Azura told them how to do it. Now, do you remember when we read that book called Azura in the Box? Where that Dwemer magus chap made a fool of Azura with his special fancy box thing, and then she swore to have revenge upon all the Dwemer people. It's circumstantial evidence at best, but it certainly fits the narrative that she, out of vengeful spite, turns to Nerevar and Dagoth Ur and says, "Here is how to destroy them all." Interesting, isn't it? Right. Nerevar was confused by his wounds and his sorrow, for he still loved Lord Dumak and the Dwemer people, and so went to the fields outside of Red Mountain to confer with his queen and his generals, who had foreseen that this war would come, and whose counsel he would not ignore again. "I will ask the tribunal what we shall do with them, for they have had wisdom in the past that I had not. Stay here, loyal Dagoth Ur, until I return." Then Nerevar told his queen and generals all that had transpired under Red Mountain, and how the Dwemer had used special tools to turn their people into immortals, and of the wondrous power of the Heart of Lorcan. The tribunal decided that the Keimer should learn how to use this power so that Nerevar might claim Resdayn and the world for their people. Nerevar did not expect or want this, so he asked his queen and generals to help him summon Azura yet again for her guidance. But the tribunal had become as greedy as Kagrenac upon hearing of the power of the heart, and they coveted it. They made ritual as if to summon Azura as Nerevar wanted, but Almalexia used poisoned candles, and Sothasil used poisoned robes, and Vivec used poisoned invocations. Nerevar was murdered. Then Azura came forth anyway, and cursed the tribunal for their foul deeds. She told them that she would use her powers over dusk and dawn to make sure Nerevar would come back and make things right again. But the tribunal laughed at her, and said that soon they would be gods themselves, and that the Kaima people would forget their old ways of worship. And Azura knew this would be true, and that it would take a long time before her power might bring Nerevar back. What you have done here today is foul beyond measure, and you will grow to regret it, for the lives of gods are not what mortals think, and matters that weigh only years to mortals weigh on gods forever. And so that they might know forever their wicked deeds, Azura changed the Kaima into Dunmer, and their skin turned ashen and their eyes into fire. Let this mark remind you of your true selves, who, like ghouls, fed on the nobility, heroism, and trust of their king. And then the tribunal went into Red Mountain and met with Dagoth Ur. Dagoth Ur saw what had been done, for his skin had changed as well, and he tried to avenge the death of Nerevar, but to no avail. He was driven off and thought dead. The tribunal found the tools he had been guarding, and through study of Kagrenac's methods, turned themselves into gods. Thousands of years after their apotheosis, the tribunal are still the gods of Morrowind, and the old ways of worship are remembered only by a few. And the murder of Nerevar is known to fewer. But his queen and generals still fear his return, for the words of Azura linger long, and they see the mark of her curse on their people every day. Okay, that was approximately 40 bloody minutes of me reading. Okay. Oh, bloody hellfire, man. Do you know what? I think I'm going to separate this into a separate video. That's what we're going to do. Right, so, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed that. And, yeah, I will upload this alongside the next part, which will be coming up imminently. So that people who didn't want to sit through all the reading can skip that, because you might not be interested, or you've probably read it before or whatever, so... Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do, so... Right, I will see you in the next bit, folks. Assuming you made it all this way through the current video. And if you did, cheers. Much appreciated. See you in a moment.